Hello, everyone,
Hi.
and welcome to yet another episode of the Someone Had to Say It podcast. My name is Olaoluwa and Temitope
And I'm Temitope Oladokun.
You can call me LA.
And you can call me Tope Dukes.
Yeah, and it's so amazing to have you here once again.
Yep.
I hope you've already clicked that subscribe
button.
Right,
very
yes,
important.
So it's going to be another exciting episode today. I can tell already.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So let's go straight to the red shoebox. And I'm sure by now you know what the red shoebox is about, which is basically where we have questions, contributions, suggestions for topics that we can discuss. And of course, every time you send them in, we put them in here and we shake it per usual.
Yeah.
And let's see what we have today.
Okay. What do we have here? Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready.
Wow.
Born ready. So give it to me.
Yeah, the topic for today is how to deal with toxic parents and family trauma.
Oh, wow, that's a deep one.
It is.
How to deal with toxic parents and family trauma.
Yeah.
So I think this one is very, very interesting because when it comes to toxicity, it comes in different forms. There's neglecting the family, there is abuse, and abuse takes different forms. There's verbal abuse, there is emotional abuse, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse. And I believe there are several people who have had different forms of experiences. So I think I'll start by asking that, do you think that these actions, when for the parents who do not take responsibility for their household, for their family, do you think it's premeditated?
I think there's an element of yes and no in answering that question. Yes, in that some people, when you look at their decisions over a course of period, you would see that consistent neglect. You see that consistent poor decision making. You would see that they've been living in that survival mode where it's always been about them and not having that sense of responsibility. And where it's no is that some people, it's just that they've not been equipped with the emotional tools to deal with their own trauma. And it's just natural that they will bleed on other people. It's natural that their family members, those closest to them, their children will bear the brunt of that trauma they've not dealt with. So I think when you ask that question, it's yes and no. Some people actually just get to the point where they shut off every sense of accountability on their inside and say, you know what, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to look out for myself alone and not care about anybody else. And some people, they just don't know better. And for me, I'm not one to just quickly label people. And I think we as people, as human beings, growing people want to do better, need to be careful not to quickly label others. Because if we look at ourselves, sometimes we have like toxic traits or toxic behavior.
Even though nobody would want to admit that.
Or narcissistic behaviors, but it doesn't mean that that person is a narcissist or that person is a toxic person, because we are growing, we're on that journey of evolution. So we need to be honest to say, was this just a moment of weakness or a moment of poor decision making versus just saying this person is toxic or my parent is toxic, my parent is, you know, a narcissist. So we need to be careful to assess, have that level of self-awareness, the that assumption or that grace we extend to ourselves to say, oh, that wasn't my intention. We need to be able to extend that level of grace to other people and be careful not to quickly label in a time of conflict or misunderstanding. We need to be able to differentiate that so that we can address issues accordingly.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me, I think that in answering the question on whether it's premeditated, whether it's intentional, I do agree with you that it may not necessarily be premeditated. But I mean, there are some patterns that you would notice in people who are either absent parents, who are abusive in any way or form. Sometimes, or most of the time, people would run their families the way the one they came out of was. And if you do not intentionally relearn the model that was passed on to you, you wouldn't know to make adjustments where necessary.
Yeah.
So in a way, right, yeah, it's maybe premeditated. In some ways it's not. But I think what often plagues people, at least from what I've observed, what often plagues parents, say for instance, unavailable fathers, for instance, is
That one is a pandemic on its
yeah,
own.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's even more common for fathers to be absent from the home than it is for mothers. It seems as though culture, society already places that onus on the mother to be responsible for nurturing the child, and not necessarily the father, apart from if you can provide, stay. If you can't, you can move on as well. So what I notice is that it seems as though some men are not able to outgrow the adolescence phase, which is, and I would explain what that means.
Powerful.
Adolescence comes with some form of rebellion. You wanting to make decisions for yourself, you wanting to gain your liberty from your parents. So anything that seems like it's holding you down, you rebel against it. And it comes with trying to break the norms, break the rules, because basically rules are made around you to make sure that you conform to them.
Yeah.
And when you get into the adolescence phase, most people have those rebellious teenage years where your parents are telling you do this, you say, no, I'm not going to do it. Come back by this time. No, I'm not going to do it. And with maturing, with adulthood, comes that level of you now self-regulating yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that is the missing piece most of the time when these things happen. So as somebody who is growing older, after you become a teenager, you are growing into an adult, you now make those external regulations, you make them internal. And some people are not able to hold themselves accountable to
They
those
don't
things.
evolve beyond that adolescence.
Yeah, so the evolution's process is not complete. So you see men who find themselves in situations where, okay, now it's time for me to be a provider for my family. I can easily just say, okay, no, this is too much of a responsibility. I'm not ready for this. So there's that I'm not ready for this.
Then yet it's like
myth.
she wants to hold me down.
Exactly,
because of the
and
child.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's how this thing happens. So my next question will be that, seeing that we are in the age range where most of our parents made the decisions that define their legacy in terms of their family, the ones who are available and present made those choices around this age. The ones who were absent made those choices around this age. The ones who are abusive made those choices around this age. Those defining years of becoming parents, of taking responsibility for your family, of taking responsibility for the commitments you made to your spouse as well.
Yes.
And I think it will be naive for us to think that, as a people, as a generation, we are immune to these vices. Absolutely. So how can we intentionally make sure that that cycle of, for lack of a better word, irresponsibility does not spill over into our own generation?
I think that's a powerful question. I remember when I was pregnant into, the period where we welcomed our baby. I think it just got me thinking like this is the age range where my parents had me. And that realization came with like a weight of responsibility, a weight of burden and deep humility. And I realized that looking at the decisions that my parents made, how it kind of shaped my foundation, right? Even though, of course, my own growth and evolution is on me now. But looking at that and realizing somebody else's life is dependent on the decision I'm going to make, decision the both of us are going to make as parents, I think it just made me humble. And for me, it seemed like a full circle moment. Like, okay, it's your turn. Like the baton has been passed to you, literally. And I also had the gift of being very introspective early in life. Even as a teenager, I would look at my mom's side of the family, look at my dad's side of the family, look at the trend, look at, the patterns, and ask myself, do I want to replicate this? And until a person does that, they will continue to live life as they've known it to be. And one thing I learned is that strong emotions, good intentions, hatred is not strong enough to break patterns and break cycles. So if a person witnessed, for instance, domestic violence in a home between the mom and the dad, and the person grows up hating the dad for what the dad did, you know, that's actually not strong enough to stop that man from hitting his wife, because in a time of heightened emotions, conflict, that person will fall back to the images they've seen, because they've not learned the ways to navigate conflict and heightened emotions. They will fall back to what they witnessed, even though they hated it. So you'd see, you know, men like that recycle, and they're wondering, why did I do this? Or children who were physically abused and would say, I would never hit my child. But then in the time of heightened emotions, that child does something like really annoying. You would find yourself repeating it, because you've not replaced those images, those wiring, you know, the mindset with something else. You've not elevated your mind beyond what you observed or what was done to you. So I think that level of introspection is very critical. Realizing that, yes, this was my experience, but I don't have to replicate this. There needs to be a replacement in the mind, in terms of information, in terms of renewing your mind, renewing your mindset, asking yourself, if I don't want to do this, what will be my alternate reaction to this? Until that question is being answered, you will find yourself repeating what you loathed, what you hated, and what you promised yourself you were not going to do. So you don't have to be stuck with what you grew up seeing. Your parents or those family members, they had their turn, or they had their shot at life, and they lived it the best way they knew how to. Now it's your turn. You have your own shot at life, because this is the age range, that defining life period. And I look at, I mean, people, I look at even in my own family, my parents' relations, and I realize that the things they did 30 years ago, right? I'm seeing the impact. So I realized that I'm in that seed planting period. I'm in that pivotal period where like, I'm actually building my legacy now.
Yeah.
And I ask myself, this is what I'm building, this is what is going to yield in 30 years. Is this what I want? If the answer is no, then I need to do a recourse. So I think we need to free ourselves up from the shackles of those that raised us, if that's not what we want. They had their shot at life. Now we have our shot to create and curate the kind of future we want. Where family is concerned, where our life choices are concerned, where the kind of life we want to live is concerned. So I think that's really, you know, important. We don't have to be tied to that. It can hurt, it can be painful, it can, I mean, trauma is so deep, because unresolved trauma leads to more trauma, right? Unresolved issues leads to more issues. We need to be able to say, this happened to me, this is how it has impacted me thus far. This happened to me when I was helpless, when I couldn't help myself as a child. Because God gave me to these people to steward me, to steward my destiny. And they probably didn't do a good job based on the knowledge they had at the time. But you are at an age where you can take responsibility and break off those chains, those cords tying you to their own decisions, and now begin to make your decision. Because in the next 30 years, you can't be telling your children, my mother did, my father did. Nobody cares. Your children they're not going to care about that. They're going to point fingers at you. So the responsibility is on us. It behooves us to begin to rewrite destiny, rewrite those cycles, rewrite the patterns. Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really powerful. In fact, as you're speaking, it just crossed my mind that one of the questions I wish I had asked my dad before shooting this episode was, how was he able to model something that wasn't mirrored to him?
So
you know,
powerful.
yeah, because I mean, my dad didn't grow up having his parents around, and seeing how focused he was on keeping us as a family and making sure everything was perfect for us, you know, growing up as a child for me, because something that you have not seen is difficult for you to replicate. And one of the ways you would know the tendencies that you are probably already setting the stage for is based on the decisions that you are already making right now. You know, some people are already showing extreme narcissistic tendencies, even in their dating relationships right now. Some people are already showing abusive tendencies, whether verbal, whether emotional, whether physical, even in their friendships. You know, you are living with a neighbor, you are already considering stabbing somebody. So that means you already have the potential to do that inside of you. And we need to be reflective enough to turn on the torchlight toward our weaknesses and try to identify how exactly are these things plaguing me. In fact, for instance, I remember having a conversation, and I mean, have had similar conversations or even heard people speak about how I know somebody who had gotten a lady pregnant, and he was telling me how that when she told him, he had told her that he wasn't ready to become a father yet. Basically, like, do with that information whatever you want to, and that she later came back to meet him and told him that she had aborted the pregnancy, sort of claiming to be oblivious of the situation. And I was like, are you really going to tell me that you didn't tell that girl what to do? Because you are basically claiming that, look at what she went and did. In you saying you were not ready to become a father, you gave her two choices. Number one, it's either she aborts the baby like she actually did, or she has the baby and raises that child alone. So that simple decision that you made has already set up your legacy. You could potentially have become an absent father to a child who is going to grow up, become a parent, and could repeat that cycle if he or she does not heal from that trauma. But unfortunately, we are not even going to get to experience that. So it's in choosing convenience over the necessary sacrifices that maturity requires in that moment in time. So it's basically you choosing the selfish path, choosing the more convenient path than the mature adult responsible thing to do in that moment. So sometimes you can't just claim that, no, I'm not going to. Nobody decides and has an ambition of being a deadbeat parent at the end of the day. But the actions you take would eventually maturate in that's being the reality that you live in. So we have to take responsibility for ourselves, for our actions, for the decisions that we are making, knowing that the decisions we are making revolve beyond just us, but the people that we have decided to do life with, our spouses, our children, our family, everyone connected to us in one way or another. So the next question I would like to ask is that, how does one, so in a situation where you have some form of toxic, or there exists a toxic relationship with a parent, how do you protect, and now you are starting your own family, how do you number one, how do you heal personally, and how do you protect your family from exposure to that level of toxicity?
That's a beautiful question. I remember I always love it for you that you didn't experience that level of toxicity growing up, and that's because your parents did such a good job protecting you from it. Not because it didn't exist in their families, but they stood up to say, you know what, we're going to shield our children. And I think that's the level of sacrifice that we have to put in as, somebody who is willing or who is desiring to break it. That, look, just because I experienced it doesn't mean it has to spill to my children, because these children have no context of what happened. They were not even alive when it happened. So why do they need to bear the brunt of it, right? And I think before even thinking of protecting your children, you need to protect yourself. Because if, for instance, a toxic family member has my headspace, it's unavoidable that I will talk about it in the house, or it would affect my mood. And if I'm talking about it in the house, the children are going to hear this discussion. It will affect them. Or if it affects my mental health, then I can't be my best self for the children. So it starts with first protecting yourself. And protecting yourself starts from acknowledging the situation. Like, we need to get to that point of acceptance, like, this is part of my story. I couldn't do anything about it, or I can't even do anything about it now. It's in the past. Accept it. If it was something beyond your control, if it was something that maybe out of ignorance or naivety you facilitated, just get to that point of acceptance that this happened. It's part of my story. I remember growing up, I would watch movies and I'll ask myself, why can't my family be like this? Like, why can't my family be like this? Because my family, the dynamics wasn't like a functional one, and I had to grow to a point where I'm like, you know what, this is my story. This is what has been dealt with me. God knows about this, and God is willing to walk with me through that journey of healing, of showing me a vision of what He wants my life to be, and His vision for the family He wants us to build, right? So you need to get to that place of acceptance. Number two, asking yourself, or having God through His wisdom showing you the rope that is linked to the past, and you in the present, and could potentially link to your future if you don't sever it. Acknowledge how it has shaped you, the ones you've not maybe accepted in your head, the ones that you need to talk about, the ones that you need to go to therapy concerning, the ones that you need to get in new information in your mind, the books you need to read, scriptures. It's like deep work, literally. You need to get to that place of healing, of rewiring your mind. That's where like the mental rewiring happens, because until that is done, the trauma can show in you being a dissociative person. You don't know how to, take love. You don't know how to receive love. You don't know how to extend love. It could, manifest as a person being stuck in that survival mode, because you're just about protecting yourself, not allowing anybody hurt you, and you just find out that you are hurting people. So that exercise needs to be done to understand how the past has shaped you and how you now need to reshape yourself by the help of God. And you being willing to do that work, because it's hard. It is really, really hard. And I think another step of healing and protecting yourself and your family is being willing to create boundaries and shut down some access. This thing is actually very, very important, because, see, we can't live lives based on sentiment.
Yeah, true.
We cannot live life based on sentiment. If we see our lives as projects, I mean God's project, we will live life with a sense of urgency. Jesus had 3.5 years of ministry. Jesus only had to die once, and the moments leading up to crucifixion and when he died were the only moments that Jesus subjected himself to hurt, to pain, to the worst form
abuse, basically.
to the worst form of brutality you could ever imagine. But before then, Jesus did not send anybody like that though. He was willing to shut down access and step away from toxic situation. For example, when Jesus went to his hometown and people were like, is this not the carpenter's son? And instead of Jesus trying to push himself on his king's men, saying that, what people are my people, you must be beneficiaries of my ministry, of my power, of my healing. Jesus just took a step back and said, you know what? A prophet has no honor in his hometown. And Jesus moved on to where he would be honored to now minister to them. Another instance was when the days leading up to the feast. This is in John 7. And Jesus' brothers, in a sarcastic tone, were telling him, you know what? Go show yourself to everyone. You are, you claim to be the Messiah. And they were being sarcastic about it. And Jesus told them, you know what? I'm not going to go. You go ahead. Nobody's going to stress you, because, people are going to come for me because I'm the Messiah. I'm the Christ. And when his brothers went ahead, it was after then that Jesus actually went to Judea. So Jesus wasn't trying to prove a point to his siblings to say, you must accept me for who I am. You must know who I am. You must accept my worth. Just as like, you know what, just go on ahead. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I start to doubt my call. I start to doubt my assignment. I don't even have that time to prove a point. I have an assignment to do. So looking at that, it's actually okay to limit access to things that can deter you, because we actually don't have a lot of time. And God is going to hold us accountable where the gifts, his callings over our lives are concerned. And you cannot waste 30, 40 years of your life still stuck to the toxicity that you came out of. What matters now is the family that will come out of you. And some people may be conflicted in themselves. And as good people, we feel like, I don't know why it doesn't occur to us to protect ourselves. We trust the intentions of people so much. It's so ridiculous because they keep showing us who they are, but we keep trusting and opening ourselves up. We need to be able to play the defensive game. Protect yourself. You have that responsibility for your life, for your generation, for your children. Protect yourself no matter who that person is, whether it's a parent, it's a sibling. Protect yourself. If you see a sibling bringing a knife to stab you, would you stand put? You would defend yourself. You may not, of course, I don't expect that you try to stab the person back, But then
I feel try to
but you get the point. Like, it's that brutal. Because it's physical wounds will be inflicted. But why do we diminish emotional wounds and mental wounds? that's even worse because it stays hidden. Nobody knows, and a person is suffering. But if you see a person with a knife wound or with a gunshot wound, you would pamper them, you will care for them, you will love upon them. But that same level of care, we don't extend it to ourselves when it comes to emotional wounds or mental wounds. The same way you would aggressively defend yourself when somebody is trying to physically attack you is the same way I aggressively defend myself and protect myself when it comes to emotional and mental assault. And you need to be that brutal. Yes, you're a good person, but you need to brutally defend yourself. You know why? Because the enemy knows, and the person who is trying to attack you knows that you will not reciprocate or you will not retaliate. So when you know as a good person, I will not retaliate, the least you can do yourself is protect yourself. Because they know you're not going to go band for band or aura for aura. You might as well protect yourself. And I think it starts from there. Being brutal, really, because you have a calling over your life. God has a purpose for you, and you cannot allow anybody jeopardize that, right? So protect yourself and the family that's going to come out of you.
I mean, that's really, that's very, very awesome. Because, I mean, given the Jesus example that you mentioned, I remember, like you said, he only subjected himself to torture and all of those things when there was purpose for it. You know, I remember there was a part in scripture where some people were trying to lynch him. He literally walked, so it was not just going to be a matter for no reason. So you shouldn't just be a matter for no particular reason. And speaking of the relevance of good parenting and a godly family heritage is that, you know, people often talk about how it's important to leave a trust fund for your children. In terms of money and assets and stuff like that. One of the greatest gifts you can leave for your children is to give them a stable image of what family is. Is to give them a good picture of family, something that they can, that's also transgenerational. It's something that can transcend from generations to generation. And the final question I would like to ask is this. The Bible instructs us to honor our parents. How do you honor a parent that is toxic?
Wow, this is a hard one. Whew, how do you? So I think in asking that question, I know this is a question that people would have grappled with, but it's like putting the cat before the horse. Because before we start to talk about honor, we need to talk about healing. A person who has not healed, who is attempting to honor, you would find yourself like further messing up that relationship because you are trying to do something, you're trying to perform externally. And the honor is supposed to appeal to the senses and the emotion of the person, of the aggressor. While you, the victim, quote and unquote, have not gone through that journey. And I think this is so important. And we also need to acknowledge the African context, how we have enabled aggressors, especially older aggressors. So you would hear things like, oh, boys, person is your mother, is your daughter, that's your father. You have to just accept. But we don't hold the aggressor accountable. We don't even check if they are on that healing journey. It's a different case if, oh yeah, they made the mistakes, but there's remorse, there's repentance, there's willingness to change course. But you don't see that. Nobody is asking those questions. It's just all about the victim sucking up and performing externally. And I think that's wrong. I believe if healing truly takes its course, honor in terms of the external performance, and even that is in question, but honor in terms of heart, which will lead to the external show, will come naturally. Because why would a parent who has wronged their child be more concerned with their child performing acts of honor versus their child truly healing? Right? And I think that's just interesting. I also want to add some of the harm that culture has inflicted is how culture also enables absent fathers, and I'm going to speak to that. And it really emboldened some men to be irresponsible because they will even brazenly tell a woman and the children as they are walking out of their lives to say, you know what, when the children are older, they will come look for me. You know why? Because culturally, when a child wants to get married, I mean, they are matured of marriageable age, when they want to get married, it is expected that they invite their fathers. In some cultures, they would not even marry the lady or allow the man marry without the father, not acknowledging that the father did not contribute anything meaningfully to the upbringing and trajectory of this child's life, aside, of course, donating the life source, which is sperm that, brought about the child. We don't acknowledge that as
First
long
and final contribution.
As long as we just look picture perfect. And I think some men know this and cash out on it and know that, you know what, I can be irresponsible, I can be absent, but I know that when this child wants to get married, they will look for me. And I can even terrorize them and make things hard for them because why? I'm emboldened by culture. And I think that's so unfair. Healing should be the first thing before a demand for honor. And healing is a journey. Forgiveness is a journey. Sometimes you think you're forgiving a person and then you see something and you're triggered. A lady with daddy issues may feel like, you know what, I've moved on from it. I mean, I'm good, I'm all of that. And you see a child or a daughter interacting with her dad and you are triggered and angry all over again. So it's a journey. The fact that you have those moments doesn't mean you have regressed. Remember, it's a journey. There is a mind. It wasn't one day that event happened. It was a series of moments. So God understands. And God is not ignorant of the frailties of our humanity. God understands. So you can think you're on that healing journey, you made progress and there's a relapse. You are not failing. It's a journey and eventually it gets better, right? So yeah, and I think when we have this in context, we will not be so bothered about honor in terms of external performance. Of course, you need to be civil. Like disrespect is not an option, really, because disrespect is not going to solve anything. Civility is a must, but in terms of, because I'm using the word honor in terms of performative external action. Some people cannot find it in themselves to do those things because first of all, there's no access. But I believe when there is healing, God will help that person through that journey and their heart to start to open up. For some people, they actually need to go cold turkey in terms of access because of their lives and the assignment they need to do, because access is a danger to their life, their purpose. And then over time, because what if it's on a parent's deathbed that they now become remorse? Are you saying you're going to subject, and imagine that they live till you are 60. Are you going to say you will not permit yourself to live till age 60? No, they had their shot at life and they made their decisions. Now it's your turn. So I think we need to pursue healing first. Embedded in healing is honor. Embedded in healing is forgiveness and every other thing. And the aggressor doesn't get to choose at what pace that happens. No, it's a journey between that person, themselves, and God. Right? So that's what I think.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, the question about honor is a very interesting one because yes, the Bible tells us to honor our parents. The Bible says to obey your parents in the Lord. So obedience has a context. And I think that's relevant because whoever is an authority that you obey, they must have values that you can align with. Because basically what you're aligning, what you're obeying is the value that they are giving to you. So you do not obey a parent who is not in the Lord. And even the honor as defined by scripture is contextual. So yes, you should, same way you should honor all men. It's being respectful, being polite, being honorable as we generally call it. But it's not the person who is abusive, who is absent, who is narcissistic, cannot define or determine how honor should be accorded to them. And like you said, I feel like any honor that should go to such a parent, such a relative, should be dependent, should be a function of the healing that is taking place in the heart of that child. So if as a child who has experienced a toxic relationship with the parents, you get to a place where you feel like, oh, okay, I can actually start sending my father an allowance. That's as a result of the healing that you have, and also your ability to do so. Because there are actually people who have good relationships with their parents, I want to do well for them, who cannot afford to send them an allowance. So the fact that somebody is getting money doesn't necessarily mean that justify the way that they treated the child. So it is a function of the healing that is taking place inside of you, and I pray that God brings healing to every person, every home that has experienced some form of trauma from the way that they were raised. I think we can wrap it up here. It's been an amazing episode.
Albeit tough.
But
someone had to say it. That's what we signed up for.
I hope you really had a great time on this episode.
Yeah.
Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us in every other platform where you're getting this from. And watch out for the next episode of Someone Had to Say It.
Yep.
Take care and have a great week ahead.